Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today, or whatever day that you are watching this video. My name is Casey Hall. I am a social media consultant. I have my own agency called Lumberjack Social, and I am going to help you optimize your LinkedIn profile. So, making sure that your profile presents a really professional and positive picture of who you are. A little background about myself, and I'll get into this more, but I actually had been an attorney years and years ago. And then after practicing for a very brief period, went to go work at Thomson Reuters, initially as a Westlaw researcher, and then through a very kind of winding path, ended up getting into being a subject matter expert to write white papers and things like that. Finally, moving into social media and corporate communications, and was director of corporate communications there for many years, and now have opened my own agency. So I'm doing this as a freelance independent consultant, and I love it. Not at all what I would have expected from my own professional path when I was in law school, but it's been excellent, and I couldn't have even planned something to work out this well. So for you all today, we're going to talk about what sort of things are going to be important for your LinkedIn profile. And I'm going to go through a handful of pretty basic measures that are really going to improve your profile if you haven't already done so. I'm sure that some of you already have LinkedIn profiles, either because you maybe a little bit non-traditional student and had some work experience between college and law school, or even if you hadn't, it's a good idea to have that LinkedIn profile set up anyway as you prepare yourself for looking for clerkships, on-campus interviews, and finally getting that full-time career in big law. So we'll get started here. I'm going to be flipping back and forth between my actual profile so I can kind of show you how we do these things right within the LinkedIn platform. And then I have this presentation that will help us guide us through. All right, here we go. So first of all, the impact of LinkedIn. In the professional world, LinkedIn is your online nameplate, basically. Every time that I am going to meet with a potential vendor or a potential client, really anytime I'm going to be meeting with someone professionally, I almost always look at their LinkedIn profile first to better understand who they are, what they're about, what their background is. And it really is an important thing to keep up to date and to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward, because many more people are going to probably see your LinkedIn profile than you'll ever be able to network with in person. So it is one of the most important pieces of your overall networking, professional development toolkit. So as I mentioned, I left Thomson Reuters recently. And when I did that, I wrote an article on LinkedIn. So you can write articles on LinkedIn that are hosted and published within LinkedIn. And I did that expressing my gratitude for all the great professional opportunities I had while I was at Thomson Reuters. Now, that post was liked by hundreds of people and seen by several thousand people. And as a result of that post, I had people reaching out to me because they wanted to be my clients. So that was a really kind of immediate and a successful use of LinkedIn for me, where I was able to connect with my network, tell them that I was going through this transition from being an in-house corporate communications person to having my own agency, and had people reach out to me because of that. So I just wanted to make it a little bit more real about, this is actually something that is going to help you get a job, is going to help you get clients. it's not just something that's good to do. It's something that I feel is really, really necessary. And if done well, can really help your professional development and eventually your business development. One of the things here on this slide is I show that for that post specifically, only about a third of the people who saw that post were my direct connections. So people that I've connected with on LinkedIn. Most of the people who saw that post saw it because one of my connections shared it. So the idea here is that while I was happy that all of my connections saw it, I was able to expand that universe as other people liked and shared that post to get out to people who might not have already known that I was in this sphere. And that's really where some of the growth and growing your network can happen. So if you have content that you can share that brings in that kind of activity, that can really generate a lot of opportunities for you. But that is specifically about publishing and using LinkedIn. What we're going to focus on today is optimizing your profile. So it's important that your profile is optimized first, because if you are generating that activity and then they come and look at your profile and your profile looks bad, it's going to be worse than having done nothing at all. All right, first things first. Let's talk about that profile. You'll notice some of my branding on these slides, pictures of a lumberjack. I have a cabin over in Wisconsin, and really one of my favorite things is going over there and splitting wood and just kind of doing lumberjacky sort of stuff. And so that was where the brand name came from for my agency of Lumberjack Social. Okay, so why optimize your profile? Whether or not you're looking for a new job or looking to expand in your current role, this really is the cornerstone of your online brand. All that networking you do is going to be fruitless if you're not able to point them to somewhere on LinkedIn to your profile on LinkedIn and have that really shine for them. So let's just look real quickly at my profile. And this is the view that I have. So I have my headshot. One of the main reasons that I use LinkedIn is to develop more speaking opportunities at conferences and things, which is something I both enjoy and is a great way for me to develop more business. So that is my background image there. Then I have my dashboard, my articles and activity. We'll talk about these. These are some media tiles that you can add. So that is what my profile looks like, and that's me. So getting started. Things to consider before you start tinkering with your profile. What is your goal for your LinkedIn profile? So as I mentioned, for me, the biggest goal is to develop business for my agency, which would be the same as if you were trying to develop business for your law firm or for yourself as a solo practitioner, or if you were trying to land a good job. So career advancement, social selling, thought leadership, network. But it's important to think about that a little bit, because if you are at this point in your law school career, you're probably not out there trying to get clients for the most part. You're trying to get clerkships and jobs. So that might change the way in which you position yourself on LinkedIn. If you were looking for clients, you would share things and like things and present yourself in a way that would be most likely to draw the attention of potential clients and to develop that network or to develop referrals from other attorneys. If, however, your purpose for LinkedIn right now is to help you get a job, you're going to change the way that you phrase some of those things and talk more about your experience and your background in a way that is going to impress potential hiring partners. So think about that. What is your goal? And I assume for many of you it is finding a job, finding more opportunities. Second, how would you describe your overall professional life and goals? So give this a little bit of thought. Obviously, most of you want to be practicing attorneys, and I think that's wonderful. But it makes sense to think about that narrative. If there is something that brought you into law school, a specific interest, whether it was entertainment law. You've been a DJ for a long time, and now you are interested in actually going and working in the law to protect artists and work in the entertainment industry. Think about that and think about what that story sounds like and how you can tell that story really well. You're not necessarily going to have that verbatim on LinkedIn, but just wanting to be a lawyer and wanting to fight for justice are wonderful things. If you can give it a little bit more of a personal edge and talk about why you're doing this, that is going to help sort of shape the tone of what you do on LinkedIn. And finally, how would you describe your job experiences to your neighbor? So for those of you who have some job experiences or educational experiences, oftentimes when you're trying to talk about those to someone who might not be in the legal field, or if you worked in some other field, it will make sense to people in that field, but you need to think about how the average person will read this. So like my job as a freelance social media consultant, I have a teenager and he jokes that, I tweet for a living, which is maybe a good shorthand, but not necessarily the way that I would explain it to someone or how I would explain it to all of you. So think about those things as you get started. What's your goal? What's your narrative? How would you describe where you are and what you're doing? And then what is the real simple way to describe your experience or educational experience to someone who may not have all of the context or know all of the buzzwords and jargon of your industry, of the legal industry in our case. Okay, so the things that we're going to cover are creating a custom URL, profile and background images, name, headline, and industry, summary, adding media, and then experience. And within experience, I'll also be talking about education. So the first thing, creating a custom URL. A custom URL makes it easier for people to find you, and it just looks more professional and it makes you look digitally savvy. So by default, your LinkedIn profile URL is going to have probably your name, but then also a string of numbers or letters. And that's just how LinkedIn assigns the URLs as they're created. But as you can see with my URL here, I've changed it to just my name. Now, that makes me easier to find if someone does a Google search for me. It makes it look nicer, it's easier to share, and it's really easy to set up. So as you can see here, you just hit edit URL, and I'll just show you live what that looks like. Over on the right-hand side here, edit public profile and URL. Once we go in there, right in the upper right is the edit URL, personalize the URL for your profile. So you can see here mine is already Casey Hall. I'm not going to change it. I'm very happy actually to have been able to get a URL that is just my name. That is not always possible, particularly if you have a somewhat common name. So if you can't use your name as a URL, or if you want to add something else, you could do, I could have done Casey Hall social media or Casey Hall Minneapolis. Those sorts of things are okay to add when your name isn't available, or if you just want to, if you want to have, Casey Hall attorney or something like that. Whatever you choose to use, just make it descriptive, make sure that it has your name in it, and no matter what you do, it'll be a nice upgrade from having that default URL of your name and a bunch of numbers and letters. Profile and background images. So your profile should be high resolution, well-cropped headshot. LinkedIn profiles that have headshots receive 21 times more profile views and 9 times more connection requests than images that don't have headshots. So this is just one of those things you have to do. It does not necessarily have to be a professional photographer image. That's ideal, certainly. But if you have, any kind of recent iPhone and, go into the library at Mitchell Hamlin, stand in front of some nice books, get a nice, clear, clean, well-lit shot, you can go and it's going to look pretty good. So, I mean, the best case scenario is having that professional image taken. What you want to avoid are obvious selfies, beach parties, all those sorts of things. And I'm not going to go into too much of this right at the moment, but it's social media in general, as you're leaning into the legal profession, certainly think about all those Instagram selfies, other things that may be out there, because while people will certainly be looking at LinkedIn, they might also be looking at some other places. And, when you express political opinions or, maybe have images when you're out partying at the beach or something, that might not be the image that you always want to convey. So more on that later. But in terms of your headshot, the just a well-cropped headshot is great. I actually lately have been using one that is not at all a professional picture. It was a picture that somebody took of me over at Minnehaha Falls, and I just happened to like the way that it looked. And I thought it was a little bit more natural for me, as I'm now in less of a corporate role. I wanted something a little bit more informal, so I have this black and white picture. And once you upload it here, you can do things like zoom it in or out, straighten it, some minor changes that you can make right within. You can add filters. Don't go crazy with any of this stuff. Make it look natural. You can change the brightness and things and saturation, but really you want it to look like a natural photo. So your headshot, and then background image. So there's my background image. Background image, when you log into LinkedIn, and what you'll see for the vast majority of people is that they have this field of blue connected dots. Absolutely nothing wrong with leaving that blue field of connected dots. But you can add a lot of kind of personal branding if you use your own image here. Honestly, I'm not in love with this image. I think I'm going to change it out soon. But as I mentioned, my goal right now with LinkedIn is to secure more speaking engagements. So I found this picture of me on a stage doing a presentation. So I like that picture for that purpose, and I kind of like that it's dark and some other things. For you, I would recommend either a picture of the law school or just some legal books, anything that would kind of convey that legal attorney branding. You could probably find a statue of the scales of justice, something like that. If there's something specific that you are into, whether it's immigration law or business law, maybe a picture that is evocative of some of those sorts of things while still, being in the legal field could be useful. Whatever you do, I think that just having a nice image there adds to your personal and professional branding in a lot of ways. All right. Name, headline, and industry. So at the top of your LinkedIn profile, you see here, President, Lumberjack Social, Speaker, Corporate Social Media Leader. So that's that name, headline, and industry. Now, by default, what it's going to use for your headline is your current position. So if that's law student, if it's attorney, whatever it might be, that's what will be in your headline by default. But you can change that, and I recommend at least thinking about changing it, because there's probably more that you can say that would be helpful in that area than just having your current position listed. Whether it is a practice area, you could say rising immigration attorney, those sorts of things. You can personalize that. Again, here, don't go crazy with it. You don't want to have, like, the length that mine is probably as long as you'd ever want to have it. Otherwise, it starts to become its own kind of thing. But give this some thought. It's a nice way to position yourself, particularly if you're in a position like you are now as a law student, that you can add some flavor there that will help your professional branding. So that's your headline. My first name is actually Patrick. I've always gone by my middle name, so I use that here and here. Current position, education. So that's your professional headline. Summary. So summary, I think, is probably the most interesting part of a LinkedIn profile to me. For anyone interested in learning about who you are and what makes you tick, your summary will be an important source of information. Your summary is an opportunity to provide a more personal insight into your professional life. This can be more than just a recitation of your professional roles. You can explain what motivates you and how you see your industry growing. So remember at the beginning, I had said that give some thought to what that narrative is, why you're doing what you're doing, not just what your skills are and what your experience is, but what really drives you and how you see the industry changing. It might be that you're excited in being in the legal industry because right now there's a lot of technologies that are changing the way that people practice law, and everything from algorithmic sentencing guidelines to smart documents and forms that work on some sort of blockchain system to automatically execute contracts, whatever that might be. If there's that extra kind of flavor that you can add, the summary is a great place to provide that and go beyond just talking about what you've already done. Talk about what you want to do. So when you think about your summary, think about it a little bit aspirationally and describe where you want to be as much as you were describing who you are. And to edit your summary, we're going to go into that same place that we just were, which is right here to edit the intro. So go back through there. And then here is your summary. So you just edit it in there, very easy to do. Save, and you're all set. Adding media. So this is a relatively new feature of LinkedIn. It's maybe 2 or 3 years that it's been around. What you can do is actually add media files to a few different places. You can add media to your summary, education, or experiences section, and it adds a lot of visual appeal, and it's a great place to share any kind of work that you've done. You can link to a product or a landing page. If you're doing any kind of social selling or demand generation, that's more of a sort of marketing play. But for law students, you can see what it looks like here where I've done it. Here's my current experience, and I've added a link to my website, Lumberjack Social. Here's my time at Thomson Reuters, and I've added a few different things. I've added a link to Thomson Reuters. I've added a link to a white paper that I did. Here's a link to a presentation. Here's some videos of different presentations and interviews that I've done. And if you click through these, you kind of get to, you can go and see it. So this one is hosted on Vimeo. There's me looking quite a bit younger. But anyway, you see how that works, and you can click through here. So many of you may not have quite these same sorts of things in terms of white papers and presentations, interviews. But if there is anything that you have out there, whether you've written a blog post or just linked to the to the school's website, other things that you might be interested in, the way to do that, I'll show you right here. Click the edit button. So here you have all of the places where you change your experience, and then here's that media link. So you can either upload a file and PDF, a handful of different file formats are supported, or you can link out to something if you have a URL. I really recommend finding something to link to, just because if nothing else, it really adds some visual interest, and you could, maybe I've done too many of them here, but it really adds some visual interest to your LinkedIn profile. Experience. All right, explain what you do, focusing on the business impact. So I know that not all of you are going to have a lot of experience at this point, particularly probably experience in the legal field. But don't just say that you led a task force. Explain what the work, how that work materially impacted the business, or in this case, a client, if possible. So when I think about the things that I'm writing for the experience section, I always sort of ask myself, so what afterwards? So I might say, I led a task force that met every month with all the leaders of the digital communications group at Thomson Reuters. That is accurate. That's something that I did and was one of my experiences. But so what? What I want to make sure and add is I led a task force which saved the company, $100,000 by reducing digital agency costs through streamlining. Give a specific outcome if at all possible. And again, I understand that for some of you that might be hard to find those examples at this point in your career, but still think about it. Think about, so what? You put whatever your experience is in there, or whatever your education is, and frame it in a way that describes the impact to your clients or to the business, or potential impact. So in your experiences, I've seen it done a number of different ways. I prefer usually a bulleted list or a short paragraph. The most important thing is that it's consistent. So if you have 3 different experiences, and for one of them you have 500 words of description about this great thing that you did, and then for your next experience you have 2 bullets, that looks weird, right? So be consistent. That's the most important thing there. And don't worry too much about getting everything in there. People are going to scan through those. As long as you are able to show broadly what you did in that experience, it's not necessary to have a full job description in each of those places. All right. And finally, just keep tinkering. The best LinkedIn profile is one that always remains a work in progress. Pay attention to what works for you and what doesn't, and adjust accordingly. As your skills, experience, and goals change, keep your profile current. Regularly updating will also help you get noticed. So on that last point, LinkedIn pays attention to when people are regularly updating their profiles, and will make those people more visible. Also, when recruiters are out there, they will be looking for people who are regularly updating their profiles, because they know that those are the people who are interested in jobs. So as you are going through law school, make those updates in real time. Try some things. If you can find experiences that are worthy of putting on LinkedIn, either in the educational section or the professional experience section, or even just updating your summary, all those things are going to be helpful to remain active. Beyond that, connect with your classmates, connect on LinkedIn with your professors if that's appropriate, connect with people out in the world who you meet and on a professional basis, and work on building that network. Once you are, feel like you have your profile looking as good as you'd kind of like it to, that's when you can start engaging in some activity. So when you're on LinkedIn, you can see all the things that other people are sharing. And just by simply going and liking and commenting, with all the people that you're connected to, that is going to raise your profile so that when you're looking for employment or looking for an internship or a clerkship, people will have heard of you before, right? So that's important. And even if there's people that you're not necessarily connected to, you can always follow people, who you might not be already connected to. And that way, even if you don't know the person, you can follow the things that they're posting. So this was hopefully helpful for you in thinking about how you approach LinkedIn. There's certainly a lot more that you can do in terms of creating your online brand, but I think LinkedIn is the most important place for attorneys, particularly to start, or law school students to start. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, really think about what your overall online profile looks like, what you're sharing. I can't say that every employer is going to look at every Instagram post that you've ever made, but someone will. And give that some thought as you're out there getting ready for interviews. And think about the way that you want to present yourself. If it's political point of view, there might you might decide that that's fine. I'm going to be very open about my politics because I wouldn't want to work in a place that would exclude me for those politics. On the other hand, maybe think about where you share those things and think about the privacy settings in different places, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, Snapchat. I guess is kind of a different scenario in terms of privacy, but share with the audience that you want to share with, and be conscious of which audience you're sharing with. All right, that is my presentation for the day. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out, and I would be happy to help you in any way that I can. All right, thank you.